Hello everyone, it is I, Josh Brony, bringing you a very special Christmas video. This is the second video I am creating on Christmas Day, showing you an update to my world collection, as I have built quite a few builds since the video I made back in September. So, without further ado, let's get started. I wanted to give you a shout. I wanted to let some of the other guys know that I was doing this, but they mostly were unavailable, so I will be doing this solo for now. So, without further ado, let's get started. First off, let's start off over here with some of the non-CraftyFoxe builds. Alright, so first off, let's start with the weather radios. First off, over here are the WR100s. This is the WR100 regular, similar to the one that I have in my collection. Over here, a version 2. This one right here is a black and silver version 1, one of the rarest ones. Down over here we have a Midland WR120 EZ, aka the first radio I ever owned, which I currently have in my possession right now. A Midland WR300, we'll say like a version 8, since I know they make version 8s of WR400s. But it has pretty much all the features of a normal WR300, which I do not own a WR300, unfortunately, so yeah. And then last here we have a Midland WR400. All these were based on a picture I found in the EASOC Discord server. Someone had built these and I decided to recreate them, but with no tutorial, I had to just go off of what I saw in the photo, and I think I did a decent job compared to what I did for 5342. I think 5342 just looks bad. But that's all for weather radios. I do have more flags coming. These two flags, I believe, are already posted. So it's gonna go Normandy's flag, and then I'll do Spain's flag. Then Scotland's flag will be after Spain, and then Brazil, and finally the United Kingdom, the UK flag will be the last flag tutorial I do, because Louise hasn't built any yet. Well, let's go over some of the new builds I have. First off are the AWVR locomotives. These are version 3. Most of these are version 3s. 777 and 767 are version 3. This is, I think, version 2. Yeah, version 2. 1206 is version 2 with its special little side. And then over here, 7375. This is the new 7375 locomotive. And then over here in the back, we have the basis for the original 7375, but with some minor new details, like I added the daylight sensors on the side. Try to apply like a little bit of back detail and I tried to do this part right here, but this didn't work out too well, so it ended up looking like this. Don't like it. The logo, I'd probably say, is one of the better parts, but still not too great. And then I still think it did kind of okay compared to what I did for like 7340, compared to what I did for the original builds. But that's really all I have to say for the AWVR fleet. I also updated the Fox a little bit. I moved his legs back a couple blocks. Some of you remember his front legs were like a couple blocks too far forward. So thanks to the help of Southern Penzi Railfan, I updated the Fox a little bit by moving the front legs back a couple blocks to match up with everything else. I've also added in, I'm not sure if this was in the last update, but I added in the Polar Express from the movie The Polar Express. Great movie, by the way. Really suggest watching it around. I really suggest watching it around Christmas time. So we have a view of inside the coaches with all the passengers and inside. And then at the observation coach, we have, well, it's supposed to be Hero Boy is here, Hero Girl is here, and then the other Hero Boy is here, while the know-it-all kid, he's supposed to be sort of in this part of the coach. And then, spoilers for the movie, at one point the Hero Boy ends up in the tender, so I put him here while the crew are in the cab. And maybe in the future I may add in like a flux capacitor device in here. I just gotta find out which device it is. Most of these builds are already featured in the September video, but I want to show off some other builds. Over here, I have from this point on, these builds are all CraftyFoxe, so shout out to CraftyFoxe as well. Here we have CSX 8888, the runaway locomotive that inspired the movie Unstoppable. Very good build. Took me a few hours or so to do this build, and I think it turned out pretty good. So 8888 is directly behind 3194, which I kind of planned on doing in the first place. But yeah, most of in part 1, so we're gonna go over some of the newer builds. I think I already talked about the AE86. Let's see. I built a 2017 Ford Interceptor. I say 2017 because that's when the tutorial came out. I think I may have let a couple extra details for the front out because of how close it is to the 2018 Hummer H2, but that's kind of on me. And then in the front here we have a 2019 NYPD traffic tow trucks for special reasons. And then over here, the 2021 Hummer H2, it's the remastered version. Here we have some NYC taxis. This one is the Toyota Camry, and this one is the Crown Vic. These are both 2017, so these are old designs from years ago. Over here we have the Los Angeles Fire Department ambulance. this is one build that Crafty recently put out, like few weeks to a couple months ago, and I think he did a really good job on some details in the back, and like this stripe that goes down the sides. That's some really good detail. Over here we have the FDNY ambulance that's been remastered. I still have the original ambulance right here from like 2017 or something. I don't remember how old this ambulance is, but it's very old. I mean, I'll be honest, it's old enough that it doesn't even have Blackstone on it. Not the greatest in terms of detail, but the new design is definitely a lot better. Next to that is the FDNY tiller truck, which is one build I've been waiting for a little while, but never suggested in the first place, because I've already suggested my builds to him. So continuing on, right behind FDNY Rescue 1, which I featured in some of the other videos. In the other video, we have the remastered version of the ladder truck and the engine pumper. So both of these are brand new 2021 designs, and they are so much more detailed than the other versions. I think in the last video I mentioned the Road Railer NS train, but if I didn't, here it is. Oh, and here's the LAFD Battalion Chief car. I believe I still have the like one of the older style vehicles. Oh yeah, here's the new FDNY Battalion Chief car. I kind of put this over here intentionally because I didn't have much room over there, so I put the new Battalion Chief car for FDNY in the front here. But here's the old FDNY Battalion Chief car, and you'll see quite a few differences, especially from like a top view. But let's go back to some of the other builds. This is another build I didn't really know he was going to do this, and it kind of caught my eye. The Mobile / Island Transportation Fuel Tanker Truck. Crafty says he sees this a lot in his area, so he decided to build it. So shout out to Crafty for seeing these a lot. I sometimes see a fuel tanker truck if I'm like on the highway, like going to different places, but that's pretty much it for that. And then over here we have some special steam engines. I think I already mentioned the Pure Marquette 1225 in the original video. Here we have Santa Fe 3751, a Baldwin 484 Northern. And pretty much all of this is based on his tutorial, so check it out there. Over here we have, there's the Pure Marquette again. Over here we have the Intercity 125, which I kind of find a little weird because this locomotive is mostly only like 4 blocks. This is the old one, and it's mostly like only 4 blocks wide. So it's kind of like one of those shorter builds that may go good on like narrow gauge track, since it doesn't really fit on my normal standard gauge track. Now, off to the side we have the remastered, actually double remastered, the P42 DC version 3. This is the third generation of P42s. I still have the original P42 way over there, but we're going to be focusing on some of the newer builds he's done and that I've recently built. Over here we have 4501 remastered, as I mentioned in the first video. Here's something I've recently also built, the EMD MP15 AC remastered. This was quite a bit of a fun build to do because it's one of the first remastered locomotives I've built from CSX, I think. Yeah. But this was a very fun build to do, so yeah, I had a lot of fun building this. And also, technically, the P42 is towing the MP15 AC. I don't exactly know why I did that. Over here we have the Milwaukee Road class A-Class 442 from Alco. All these are scrapped, unfortunately, so none of these survive. Back over here, I skip some of these, unfortunately. We have the Montana Rail Link F45. And over here are the 2 cars for the NS safety train. But I didn't want to go through the trouble of rebuilding it again, because he already has a new version coming out soon. I'm not sure when he's going to release it, but I do know it is in the works. So I will build it whenever he releases it. So we have the boxcar and the tanker right behind it. And this is technically supposed to be a BC coal gondola car, which this was interesting to build because the amount of stairs it had and terracottas was quite interesting. Next over here we have one of the 2 harder builds to do, the Union Pacific 1983. This is something I wanted to show you. So normally in Bedrock version of Minecraft, you would not normally be able to do this. However, I was able to do it because there's a, hold on a second, I'll find out what that block is later. So that's a nether brick slab, dark prismarine. There's a lever. So lever, I believe I put the lever here. And then, no, that won't fit. But there was a trapdoor here. The lever wasn't fully visible, so aha, I know where it was. There. And now it was like this. Now I gotta find out how to get out here. Alright, so gotta get out of here. Orange concrete. So of course stairs facing the side. So Actually, put it like that for now. Quartz stairs, and then a nether bricks slab, I believe, is there. I'll rewatch the tutorial later. I'm gotta put this block behind it. But something kind of clever I came up with. I don't exactly remember what block I put, so we'll just leave that as a dark. Actually, I'll leave that as an orange concrete for now, since I think that's what it was. But anyways, let's move on to one of the hardest builds ever. This is in my top 5 of hardest builds. The Chicago and Northwestern 8100, a AC44 CW. This one did not use world edit, but it gave me a headache. Oh my god, throw that into the lava pool. So this build was hard to do, but it was worth it in the end, because the amount of detail in this locomotive, the fact that it didn't really use world edit, should have made it easier, but it was not easy at all. Let's go further down the line here. We have the MPI MP36PH-3C from Metrolink. One of the older style builds from Crafty. Here we have the remastered Long Island Railroad M7. I was going to build another one of these, but I didn't want to go through the trouble of rewatching the tutorial again. So I just built it like this. And then here's another newer build. The EMDX1 SD60. So, this is one build that was very fun to build. Over here, the Mark GP39H-2 damaged in Silver Spring. Thunder has more information in his Silver Spring documentary, so y'all can go check that out if you want to. Over here, the GP20 demonstrator here. This is one of the, like, possibly more interesting because of the detail that Crafty put in, especially for like the front and the top. Here's one build that Crafty had a little bit of struggle on, the Zootopia freight diesel locomotive, but still a build that was very fun to make for me, but not the easiest for Crafty to make for sure. And then up here we have the Via Rail LRC, which this is using the original design. He showed off a bit of a new design when he released that incident with a Via Rail LRC. That's it for that row. Over here, this is one build that I never thought Crafty would release. The Back to the Future DeLorean. This build, I thought Crafty would never make, but this was so fun to make. And the effort that Crafty made into doing this was amazing, especially the fire effects at the back. And I actually did a tiny bit of look for the license plate, and I put California at a time, just like they did on the actual DeLorean from the Back to the Future movie. But anyways, we're gonna get into some of the other Union Pacific builds, and we'll eventually talk about some of these over here. Alright, so over here, as mentioned, I think in part 1, we have Union Pacific 3985, the Challenger that was retired sometime in 2020, the Strasbourg number 20 coach, a build that Penzi, Southern Penzi Railfan did, the Pennsylvania Railroad T1, which this was a very fun build to do, although it was kind of challenging. But expect to see 5550 up and running sometime by 2030. And then behind that, we have the Chesapeake and Ohio M1 steam turbine. Another classic build, another good build from Crafty, from a steam engine that unfortunately never really saw daylight because of how much of a failure the M1 steam turbines were. This was one locomotive that was hard to find research on. The Saudi SRO SDL 50. These were originally made by EMD, but then shipped off to Saudi Arabia. I know Rails Unlimited has, or at least had this, so you can check out Rails Unlimited on Roblox, or search up on YouTube Rails Unlimited. And then here's another build, the Amtrak SC44 Charger 1402. I numbered this as 1402 to honor this locomotive since it was wrecked back in 2017. And then over here, we'll get to these in just a second. Here we have the most recent build as of the recording of this video. You guys can try and pronounce that however you want to. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. The CVSR FPA-4, which when I first saw this, I thought it looked like an F unit at first. Like an F7 or something, but it's actually an FP unit. Here we have, before we go on to some of the other harder builds, let's take a look at these two builds. NS 1066, the New York Central unit. And there's a new symbol Crafty used, that's unfortunately like not in Bedrock, where this text turns white if you do like a certain key function. Behind 1066 is the Santa Fe Zebra Stripe engine, the SD24. One of the more interesting builds I have done. I should have put that hole in earlier before I started recording, but I should have checked these first to make sure, but at least better fixing it now than never, I guess. But moving on, let's go down these roads before I go check out some of the other locomotives way down there. Here we have the Conrail SD80 Mac. This unit was the leader for the power move in that one animation Crafty did. So this was a very fun build to do, especially with the amount of detail on it and the fact that it's one of the only Conrail locomotives I've ever built. Here's another special one. Union Pacific 1982, the Mopac / Missouri Pacific engine, which is the first engine to use packed ice and obsidian. So that was a very fun build to do. I already covered most of these engines. So I already covered the coal turbine, centipede, veranda, gas turbine Gen 3, Katie, ACE/AH, the 855, DDA 40X, and DD35. So we'll go down the line of this row. Here off, we have a Go Transit F59PH, and all these are old style builds. I just put in the line. Here we have a Go Transit bi-level coach cap car, connected up to a Via Rail F40PH. Then connected to that is a Caltrain MP36PH-3C, and coupled up to that is a Caltrain coach cap car with an observer. Next to that is a Tri-Rail F40PH. Behind that is a, what are you doing up there? I don't know what he was doing up there. A Metra F40PH -3. Over here is an NJT ALP46. And then this was going to be Shay, but unfortunately this whole build just got confusing, so I unfortunately never continued working on it. But now let's get into some of the other harder builds. Starting off with the Southern Pacific Cab Forward. This build I thought was going to be extremely hard, but it's kind of ratherly easy. But honestly, the hardest part was making the locomotive from here to the end, right where it's right before the tender starts. And then tender was the easy part, and this in total is about 52 blocks long, which is one of the longer builds I've done. As you can see, it goes pretty much from the beginning of the locomotive for the Gen 3 turbine all the way to the B unit. And here we go for the two hardest builds, starting off with the Burlington Route Pioneer Zephyr. This was a hard build to do for sure because there was a lot of world edit involved, and I just got very confused, but I powered through despite how hard of a build this was. It was worth the effort I put into it. Now, onto the hardest build I've ever had to do. The Union Pacific coaches. This was the hardest set of builds I've ever done. Sorry, my cat's a little interesting right now. So here we have the box car, the regular box car, and then behind that we have the Union the 6334 Art Lockman. Honestly, the hardest part about doing this was building either the 2-axle or the 3-axle bogies and their whole bases from scratch. That was the hardest part. And this coach, the 5769 Council Bluffs, was also difficult because I didn't know where the flag was supposed to be. But it turned out the flag was on the same side, so I just took a picture of this and then built it on the other side. But behind this is I don't know why it says City OG, but this is the city of Salina. I'll fix that little mistake later off camera. So the city of Salina was a very interesting one build to do. Next behind it we have the base for the 2 dome cars. First off we have the Challenger Dome coach, and then behind it we have the Dome Lounge. And then that was it for part 1, and all of part 1 is behind Union Pacific 4014. Actually, no. Yeah, part 1 is behind 4014, while part 2 is behind 844. So for part 2, we have the Howard Fogg Power Car 1. The special light gray terracotta that was used for most of these builds. And it was by this point I was starting to get a little familiar with the 2-axle and 3-axle bogies, so that got a little bit easier. But there was one coach that had the 3-axle and the 2-axle bogies, and I'm pretty sure it's in part 2. Check again. Yeah, it was this one. This one used the 2-axle in the front and the 3-axle in the back. It's made it a little confusing, but it was honestly very fun once this build was done, because I knew I was over halfway through. After this, after that one, I had the City of LA, the diner car, and this one had quite a bit of detail on the bottom, but still turned out really good. Then next behind it is the second power car. Not much to say about that. Then the Reed Jackson business car, which I think this is supposed to be like a door, like some sort of door or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then we have the last 2 cars. The Kennefic business car 2. This is the second business car in the collection, I think. And then finally we have, and then this is the like observation like coach, and you could have stopped here, but I decided to keep on going and build the Idaho track inspection car, which this was the final build in the collection. that is the final build I have to show you. Now I have some other builds that are in the works, and really the only build I've done for the other world, for the Thomas world, has been that I've added in Hero, but that's about it. I also have a couple more builds over here. The BNSF 6111, I built this in honor of it surviving a direct hit from that tornado that I heard about. Then over here is the first, like, military vehicle in my collection, a Black Hawk helicopter. So that was a very fun thing to build. And then let's get on to the final set. Find it. Oh, it's around here somewhere. Here it is. The 1-to-1 scale build. So most of the other builds are 1.5-to-1, but this one is 1-to-1, so it's a little more realistic to actual size. We have the SD40-2 being a CSX, and then BNSF 4470, the C44-9W 1-to-1 scale, and then the most recent one, the ES40 DC. And I was actually in the process of building this when the December nocturnal storm started kicking up, so I stopped this build but continued it once the storm was over. So that is it for the 1-to-1 scale and all the builds right now. I have some other builds in the works. Like, for example, behind 6111, I have the Class 86 DRG British Rail engine coming. The Silverliner 4 remastered coming. A J70, pretty much the J70, LNER J70, which is Toby. And if I have enough room, the 1-to-1 scale cars will be coming to that area next. Behind here we have a lot of engines. The tank train that Crafty did, FPA-4, which I actually built up there. SD70 Mac H2, BNSF SD40-2, P32 Metro North, the Vomit Bonnet, BNSF engine, the FE Florida East Coast Fleet, SW9 switcher, and the Canadian Pacific ES44AC. And then I have some extra room up here, so if maybe like a couple builds don't fit here, I'll put them over to that part. But for the Thomas world, I have some other builds coming. I have some members of the pack that are coming. The front loader Jack, his friend Alfie, and then Max and Monty. So those are two builds coming up. And also there's my ACA P50 siren over there. But that's really all I have to share. I'm gonna fix this off camera so it's a little more even. But that is all I have to share for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And for today, I wish y'all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye bye everyone.